They are heads apart for the lead. Caracaro is in third. Max Player now makes his move on the extreme outside. Country Grammar is down towards the rail, and Tiz the Law has the lead at the top of the stretch. It is Tiz the Law in front with 3/16 to the finish. Tiz the Law has a 4-length lead. He's left the others behind. It's Tiz the Law. He won the Belmont Stakes. He's going to win the Run Happy Travers, and now it's on to Kentucky as the favorite in the Derby. Here he is, Saratoga's hometown hero.
And welcome to the individual horse previews that we're doing for the Kentucky Derby this year on Racing Rundown. Over the course of this week, we're going to go through all of the confirmed runners for the Kentucky Derby, and eventually we will have all of them. Just a few horses are still question marks, but the ones that we have confirmed, we're going to go through all of them, kind of like we do with our individual race previews, but just spend time talking about the horses, what's good about them. If there's any, question marks about them, address those, and, ultimately talk about them going into this year's Kentucky Derby. And obviously, as you can tell by the title, the first horse that we're going to get to is the presumed favorite for this year's Kentucky Derby, Tiz the Law, the winner of the Belmont Stakes and the Travers this year. Two of his 3 Grade 1 wins this year. Tiz the Law undefeated, 4 for 4, all 4 of those stakes wins. And Tiz the Law has not run outside of Stakes Company since his debut, which was a New York bred maiden at Saratoga, which if you have not seen that race, and you're looking at Tiz the Law for the Kentucky Derby, I highly suggest you go watch that, because that just shows how much talent Tiz the Law had even at that point, his first career start. So Tiz the Law, the thing with him is he's just improved with every start. You can even include the Kentucky Jockey Club, the one race of his career where he did lose. You can even say that he did have some positives come out of that race with him, because I do believe that, him having to experience adversity the first time, especially as a 2-year-old at the track where the Kentucky Derby is going to be run at, definitely will benefit him going into this Kentucky Derby. Obviously, we will talk about that defeat, because I know that, if you're looking at this race and you're looking at Tiz the Law, he did lose that race, and it is concerning that, Tiz the Law as a 2-year-old lost a race at the track that the Kentucky Derby was at. The only race where he really had some kind of major adversity to deal with, that was the Kentucky Jockey Club last year. Is the only race of that kind for Tiz the Law where he's had adversity. And, he did lose in a race like that where there was not everything went his way. But I think ultimately Tiz the Law is so much better now as a 3-year-old and middle part of his 3-year-old year than he was as a 2-year-old in just his 3rd career start in that Kentucky Jockey Club. So I'm willing to give Tiz the Law a pass for that race. I'll get into it a little more later, but I do want to talk about 2 of his most recent races. Obviously, the Belmont Stakes. Everyone has seen that race already, and Tiz the Law was spectacular in there. But I think the thing that really cemented Tiz the Law, and if you're still doubting him a little bit, then I would definitely encourage you to go watch the Travers Stakes again, because just the way that Tiz the Law won that, you can tell that he was so much superior than the rest of the horses in that field. And it's not like he was running against a group of nobody horses. Max Player, who he's beaten now a couple of times, is a really consistent runner, and generally in most of his races has run really well, has been 3rd in the last 2 Grade 1s that Tiz the Law won. And the 2nd place horse that he beat in that race, Caracaro, who did kind of close up toward the end. Tiz the Law was eased up halfway through the stretch in the Travers, so that's really why Caracaro closed there. But Caracaro is a really nice horse in his own right, and we'll get to Caracaro later on when we get to his preview. But, like I mentioned already, Tiz the Law was eased up halfway through the stretch. I said this while watching the race, and then after, seeing him eased up, and then, seeing with the time that he had being eased up basically 3/4 of the way through the stretch, and having not really being given the opportunity to run up to his full talent level and potential. And I think had he, not had a Kentucky Derby, had Manny Franco not had the Kentucky Derby and saving the horse for the races that come later, had he not had that on his mind and just been able to let Tiz the Law run, I think we could have seen easily a double-digit margin, and maybe even talking about breaking that track record that Arrogate set in 2016, with Manny Franco easing him up. Tiz the Law still ran a 1.25 miles in 2 minutes 95, which is spectacular, even if you're just running normally for a mile and a quarter race. But with the way that Tiz the Law was not fully cranked up and to still run that amount of time, what is he going to do when he's fully allowed to, show what he has? And I think you're definitely going to see that in the Kentucky Derby, because Tiz the Law is going to have to, not necessarily going to have to run his 100% best race, but you're going to see the best of Tiz the Law in the Kentucky Derby. I think that's a pretty fair bet. It is also worth mentioning that Tiz the Law at the moment is the only horse going into this Kentucky Derby that has won a Grade 1 going a mile and a quarter. Again, the horses that are also in the Derby from the Travers have gone a mile and a quarter, so Tiz the Law isn't the only horse, but the two other horses that are in this year's Kentucky Derby that have gone a mile and a quarter, I should say, Tiz the Law has beaten those horses already. So I think it's definitely going to be to his advantage. He's gone the mile and a quarter before. Caro and Max Player have also, but he's beaten them. And I think Tiz the Law, it's definitely going to benefit him that he's got the advantage on a lot of the other horses like Honor AP and Authentic and Art Collector, that he's gone the distance and they haven't necessarily. Now, the elephant in the room is the Kentucky Jockey Club, and I can understand why, someone would have the mindset that I talked about a little bit earlier, that, if this horse is all that he's cracked up to be, but he lost his one race at Churchill Downs, so does that not bode well for him? Looking at that race, he definitely did have a lot of adversity to deal with. It rained, it was a wet track, and he got trapped inside on the rail. And, that definitely is something that if Tiz the Law draws an inside post position, like definitely the one post, but, something toward the inside, you can definitely put a little bit more into that race and have a little bit more concern come out of that. But, I think Tiz the Law ultimately at that point, he had all the adversity. I believe he had to check at one point in the race, and he did at one point get his nose in front in the stretch. And Silver Prospector, who did come back and was a grade 3 winner and did run well in some stakes races. Silver Prospector was clear in the stretch, did have to go a little bit wider than Tiz the Law did, but he didn't have to deal with the amount of adversity that Tiz the Law had to deal with. So Silver Prospector was obviously in a bit of an advantage, as opposed to Tiz the Law not having to split horses and check, like I already mentioned, and having to take as much of the dirt and stuff that Tiz the Law had to take. But I'm willing to excuse him for that effort. He was a 2-year-old. There were several excuses there: the rain, the trip. If he does get an inside post and it does rain, which, the post draw hasn't happened, so we can't predict that. I'm not going to say right now that I would not pick Tiz the Law just because of a post position draw that we don't even know what the results of that are going to be. Ultimately, I think Tiz the Law has improved so much since that Kentucky Jockey Club. His 3 Grade 1 wins this year, the Florida Derby, the Belmont, and the Travers, have been as impressive as you could have expected them to be. He did have a little bit of adversity to deal with in the Holy Bull. He handled it. That was there weren't that many horses in that race, so you obviously can't say that the adversity question mark is completely taken care of. But I think, ultimately Tiz the Law is the deserving favorite. I don't really think there are many people who would disagree with that. That's not a hot take to say that Tiz the Law is the deserving favorite, because it's pretty obvious that he's done the best running of any of the horses going into the Kentucky Derby this year. And I think, we're just ready to see what's going to be a really, really good performance from Tiz the Law. Ultimately, not to spoil my preview for this Kentucky Derby that's going to be coming out next week, Tiz the Law's the number 1 horse on my list. I like him on top. I don't think that there are many horses that are even in the same competition level as Tiz the Law, and even the horses that you can make a case for them being up to his level, I think that Tiz the Law is better than them. So again, not to spoil it, but he will be my pick for the Kentucky Derby. I realize there is still some concern for the Kentucky Jockey Club, and this is his first race since the one race that he did lose in his career, but I'm not super concerned about that. And I think if you are trying to beat Tiz the Law, I think that that's the only reason you can come up with reasonably that he could lose. So that's where I stand with Tiz the Law, the favorite for the Kentucky Derby, rightfully so. And that's it for this preview. We're going to have a preview for all the other horses like I mentioned. These are going to be around the 10-minute mark, so appreciate you stopping by. If you do play Tiz the Law, good luck, and We will see you next time. Have a good one.
A Max Player, Sole Volante, and the field is at the top of the stretch, and there goes Tiz the Law now to take over. It's Tiz the Law in front in the stretch, and there's an eighth of a mile to the finish. Dr. Post moves up on the outside into second, but it is Tiz the Law, and the New York bred is going to win New York's Belmont Stakes, the first leg of the 2020 Triple Crown.